What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We've reached the end of one of the greatest trilogies in movie history, and personally one of my favorite trilogies in movie history. I feel like out of the three movies, this one is definitely the most divisive. Some people absolutely love the Western setting, while I feel like others think it's definitely the weakest chapter in the trilogy. I don't think anybody really just hates it, though. Personally, I think Part 3 doesn't really get enough credit. It may not be as groundbreaking as the first film, or even as mind-bending as the second one, but I think that it is a heartfelt conclusion, especially for the character of Doc Brown. So let's saddle up and talk about why this finale deserves more love. This film picks up immediately after the cliffhanger ending of Part 2. Marty discovers that Doc Brown has been stranded in the Old West after a lightning strike sent the DeLorean back to 1885. And so with the help of the 1955 Doc, repairs the time machine and travels to the Wild West to rescue his friend. But after learning Doc is destined to be murdered by the infamous outlaw Buford Mad Dog Tannen, just days later, Marty decides that he can't simply leave. Now they have to save Doc, find enough speed to get the DeLorean back to 1985 without gas, and somehow avoid changing history forever. It's another completely clever premise for these characters. Now, this is also Doc Brown's film. If the first movie belongs to Marty and Part 2 belongs to Biff, then Part 3 belongs to Doc Brown. Christopher Lloyd gets far more emotional material here than in the previous films, which is my already first positive thing on a rewatch. For the first time, we see Doc questioning logic in favor of love. After meeting Clara Clayton, a brilliant scientist who always relied on facts, suddenly finds himself completely thrown off by emotion. It's a side of Doc that we've never seen before, and Lloyd absolutely nails it. Instead of just being the funny inventor, Doc becomes the emotional heart of this film and the story. Marty also finally grows up in this film. One thing I really appreciate about the movie is Marty's character arc over the three films. Throughout the trilogy, Marty has one major weakness, is that he can't stand being called a chicken. Every single time someone insults him, he immediately makes a bad decision, and Part 3 finally addresses that flaw. Instead of reacting out of pride, Marty learns to think before acting, and it's very subtle, but it's also an important lesson that he learns over the course of these films. His growth feels very earned, and it gives the trilogy a satisfying emotional payoff. Now, I'll admit, the first time I watched Part 3 when I was younger, I wasn't sure how I felt about turning Back to the Future into a Western, but now, at my current age, I actually really love the film. The Old West gives the trilogy a completely different visual identity. Instead of futuristic gadgets and neon lights, we get a bunch of dusty streets, horses, saloons, that classic cowboy stuff, and it keeps the trilogy from feeling, not repetitive. Each movie has its own personality, and I feel like Thomas F. Wilson here does it again as far as performances goes. He deserves so much praise throughout his trilogy. This time he's playing Buford Mad Dog Tannen, an ancestor of Biff. He's louder, meaner, more violent, and somehow this time a lot more funnier. And Wilson completely commits to the role. Every time he's on screen, you immediately know trouble is not going to be far behind. And it's impressive how every Tannen across the trilogy feels connected while still being a unique character. Mary Steenburgen as Clara is one of the biggest additions in this film. Whenever franchises introduce a major new character, in the final installment especially, it can feel pretty forced. But not here. Clara actually fits naturally into the story, and her chemistry with Doc feels pretty genuine, and their relationship never distracts from Marty's mission. Instead, it gives Doc something, he's never really had before, a life outside of science. And by the end of the movie, you're genuinely rooting for them to succeed in their love quest. The train finale is awesome because if Part 1 has the clock tower and Part 3 has the train, what an incredible finale. Using a steam locomotive to push the DeLorean to 88 miles per hour is exactly the kind of crazy idea only this franchise could pull off. And the sequence is suspenseful, emotional, exciting, and beautifully shot. Every minute raises the stakes. Will Marty make it? Is Doc going to stay behind? Can Clara survive? Everything comes perfectly together. Alan Silvestri once again delivers an outstanding score. This time he blends the iconic Back to the Future theme with classic Western influences, and the music really helps Part 3 stand apart while still feeling connected to 1 and 2. By the end credits, it genuinely feels like the end of an unforgettable adventure. Now, just like Part 2, I feel like, clearly, just like any film, this has problems. I think it's the slowest of the trilogy. The middle section doesn't really have quite that same non-stop momentum as the first two films. And if you're expecting constant time traveling twists like part 2, you might actually be disappointed here. But I actually think that the slower pace works this time around. After 2 movies of chaos, it's nice spending more time with these characters before saying goodbye. And that's exactly why, just like the previous 2 parts, I love the ending of this film. I love how this trilogy ends. Marty returns in 1985, and he finally avoids making the mistake that would have ruined his future. DeLorean is destroyed, and then just when you think it's over, Doc appears in a time-traveling steam locomotive with Clara and their children, and it's such a joyful ending because Doc found happiness, Marty grew into a better person, and the future is left exactly where it belongs. As Doc says, your future hasn't been written yet, no one's has. Your future is whatever you make it, so make it a good one. And I feel like that's still one of the greatest closing lines in movie history, and gets you a little emotional when you hear it again. And so with that, Back to the Future Part 3, I feel like may not be the flashiest movie in the trilogy, but it's the perfect ending for this trilogy. It gives every major character a satisfying conclusion, and it takes creative risk without, or with its Western setting. I feel like it delivers another unforgettable climax, and it wraps the trilogy with optimism instead of simply trying to outdo the previous movies. And so for me, I think while this is not quite, on the level of the first film, it's a fantastic conclusion to one of Hollywood's greatest trilogies. And so before we wrap things up, a lot of people like me to rank things. So instead of making a whole ranked video, just let's do it here. I feel like Back to the Future is number 1, Back to the Future Part 2 is number 2, and then following in place is Back to the Future Part 3. If you're asking for scores, I'd probably go 10, 9.9, 9.8. I think that these 3 movies work best as one complete story. Watching them back to back is one of the best movie marathon experiences that you can have as a child or an adult. And that is going to wrap up my Back to the Future series for this anniversary. If you have watched all 3 reviews and you have stayed with me during this and the rankings, give me your rankings down below in the comments below. Would you put number 2 over number 1? Would you put number 3 over number 2? How would you do it? And with that, like, subscribe for more deep dives, retrospectives, all kinds of stuff coming soon. We've actually got a special series to end out summer on the last week of July, so be prepared for that if you're going to be a subscriber. And if you want to be a caramel chocolatier and join the Patreon, links will be down below in the description below. I also want to thank my Patreon producers for supporting the channel and doing all that you do. And with that, thank you guys for watching.
I thought we could settle this like men.
You thought wrong, dude.